right, so welcome everyone. This is the finished painting. We're going to get started here in just a second. I also wanted to, just at the beginning here, we're going to just go over a few things here. Usually I'll do this at the end of the video, but we actually have a little bit of time now in the start of the video. Let's just take a little bit of orange. So I used a little bit of the orange here, and I put a little bit of that into the top tube of my paint here. And this is titanium white, Winsor & Newton, or actually this is Holbein titanium white. And this is one of the things I didn't do at the end of the painting, but I always like to do at the finish of a painting. If you've painted over a few lights and you want to recapture those lights, you can get some of those lights and get them, you can recreate those lights in a very subtle way, but it really works well. Like this, you can kind of get a few of the window panes and some of the lights back here, like so. And this really does work nicely. Again, if you want to recapture some lights, it doesn't have to be everywhere, just a couple spots here and there. And the same here, you can do a few for these, for the front door, if there's been a few spots that, just some indications, like that. And that's about it. So I just did, want to show that right in the beginning of the video here, so I'm hoping you're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to get started in just a second with the painting. We're going to do the drawing first, a real thorough and complete technical drawing with rulers. We're going to measure things. We're going to use our measurements to get the angles correct for our gables of our roof here, and all of the windows and doors. We're going to get everything in just right using some rulers and some straight edges, and it'll be a lot of fun. It's going to take a little bit of time to do the drawing, but then once we're done with that, you're going to see how we're going to use our Prang Oval 16 set and get all of our beautiful washes on here. Have a lot of fun doing that, and it'll be very rewarding. So we'll start up in just about 10 seconds from now. Okay, so we'll see you in a second. All right, we just saw the finished painting, so we're going to have some fun and get started here with our drawing, with our layout, with a few of the considerations that we have right before we start our painting. We're always kind of talking about, with our paintings, let's start off on the right path and get some preliminary things started right away. So first thing is, let's get our rectangle on our paper here. So I'm going to, and this is going to be more of a square. I think I'm going to do more of a square style painting here. Like this. And I can go above my source there, my photograph. So we're doing a farmhouse style home in the farmlands. So this is kind of a style house that you might find in the farmlands. So we're going to have an enjoyable time sort of laying this out. And I think it's a really nice design, and we're just kind of zooming in. So we're focusing in on just the front entrance of the house and maybe the living room area where there's a chimney and this basic front elevation of the house. So this is going to be fun. The first thing I'll do is, I think with architecture, with something like this, we're going to want to use some rulers maybe, just to get ourselves a kind of a better bit of angles and things without stressing too much, trying to draw it by hand. So essentially I'm looking at about, I would say, a little more than halfway across the picture is the left side of this house, which is probably the living room and upstairs bedrooms in this house. So this front elevation here, we're looking at the front elevation view. This would be the living room and dining room areas in the front of the house. This is the entry doors that go into the front area of the home, the foyer, and then into the entrance of the home. And then you have over to the right side, this might be some, again, this could be the living room over here and bedrooms, and this could be the dining room over here on the right-hand side, and then bedrooms up above. But that's the basic layout of the front of the house, I would say. And then we have some dormers up top, one dormer up top, and then it looks like there's a cupola up top of that. So let's get started, and we'll just sort of make the note that if we were to go halfway across the painting, it's about there. So a little past halfway is this first corner by the entranceway for this gable rooftop area and chimney. So let's take halfway about here, go a little past halfway. I'll set my ruler down like that and just make a little bit of a hash mark there, maybe up top too, maybe on the bottom, just so I don't lose my place. All right, so that's going to be kind of this corner of the house here. I'm not going to do any angles, so I'm going to draw this in like 2 dimensions. So I'm looking also here. Let's keep the house, the front of the house, low in the picture. So right along the bottom of the painting here. So let's only go up about an inch and a half at most. Yeah, let's go about an inch and a half. And then we're just going to take maybe a ruler. I'll use another ruler here. I have a T-square ruler here. So I'll just take that. And then I'll just set this on the paper. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to get a level line, basically, here. All right, so that's our first line. A level line about an inch above wherever you want your rectangle to be. So you can, when you're doing this painting, and again, this is an extreme beginner's painting, so, this is fun. If you're just starting out with watercolors, you can draw this in any style you want. You can do like a landscape format where your paper is going to be wider. Or you can do it like I'm doing here, which is sort of a square. I'm using like basically a square, probably like a 9x9. Let's see if I'm correct. This is a 9x9 square, essentially. So the first thing I did was I made a 9x9 square with my pencil line. That's my rectangle or my square I'm going to work within. Then I went about an inch up from the bottom and made my level line across, and that's going to be where the bottom of the house is, approximately 1 inch up. 1 inch and a half. This is about an inch, I think, right here. Yes, I made that about an inch above. And then I said that the corner of the house here, where the entryway is about a little more than halfway. So if this is halfway, I just pushed it over a little bit more, and that's going to be that first line that we have there. So let's just make that first line going up, which is the corner of the house here, the one section of the house. And then if we look at this portion here where the gable starts and the second floor starts approximately, that's about a little more than halfway up the paper. So if you look at your rectangle or your square and you say, all right, what's about halfway? You can measure it and say, okay, well, 9 inches, half of 9 inches is 4.5 inches. So you can go 4.5 inches. So there's 4.5. That's about halfway from 9. And it's a little bit above that, maybe another inch above that. So I'll go a little bit like an inch above the halfway point on this square that we have set up here. Like that, okay? So now we have that first vertical line with the where the gutter is here and where the gable starts going up this way. Now, that's a pretty steep roof pitch there. So I would say if I take my ruler and put it on the photograph and I say, all right, let's take the roof pitch like that and then just bring it down like this. and just keep that same angle going. You could make it a little more steep. I think I'm going to make it a little more steep like this. And I'm just going to run this all the way up like this. And then I'm going to say, all right, the top of this peak is about an inch below the top of the painting. So I'm going to come an inch down, and that intersects right there. So that's going to be the other line. So I'm going to do this and make the other angle this way for the peak, and the other gable going the other way, like that. And that looks pretty good. That's a pretty good triangle there. If you want to make sure your triangle is perfect, you can make a straight line across here where we made our stop point right there. You can go across straight here. And you can drop another straight line wherever you make the peak of your gable, like this. You can take a line, drop it straight down, plumb, like this, make a dot, and then you should have the same distance from this point to the center to this point to the left, and that'll give you a perfect pyramid. Let's see how we did. Let's take a look here. How much do we have here? We have, I'll use my smaller ruler here. Maybe I'll use the metric here. Yeah, 6 centimeters and 6 centimeters. We're right on the money right there. Looks good. So we're dead on there. And that's going to be our peak of our gable right there. Now we have a chimney. So we're going to make that chimney a little bit higher than the peak of the gable. So we're going to say about there. We're going to make the top of the chimney. And that chimney is good. It's large. It's actually, substantial in size. So we're going to go maybe, let's make that chimney, if I have to say, let me take a look here and see what's going to look good. Yeah, I would say, let's make that chimney approximately 3/4 of an inch wide. I think that's good. And then we'll make it wider as it gets down lower. So there's 3/4 of an inch, like that. And then we're going to take that plumb line straight down, like that, and like this. And then you can see here, we've got our chimney now, which is really an elongated rectangle just coming straight down. And we made it 3/4 of an inch up top. And that chimney is centered right on the center point of the gable, which is behind now, because if you can see in the picture, the gable is actually behind the chimney, and the chimney is up above the tippy top of that gable portion of that roof. So that's where we can pretend, all right, that's it. We've now drawn in the chimney, so we can erase whatever's behind that chimney, because that chimney is now in front of everything else, and that will be good. And we remembered that we centered the chimney on the very tippy point of this gable roof here, like that. Now, as we come down with this chimney, we're going to notice that it does get a little larger as it comes down about top of those windows. So for right now, we're going to just let this go for now. I'm just going to transfer these chimney plumb lines straight down. We're going to make them wider in a little while, but right now we're not concerned about that. We have the main features of this left side of the elevation over here completed. We have the prominent chimney right here in the front, and then behind that we have our walls with our gable roof area, and then we have our windows, which we're going to draw in once we get the right side over here of this section kind of completed. So now we're going to look at this here and say the entryway of this house is right here, and it's lower here by about, if we had to say, it's about 2/3 up from the bottom is the roof right here, where the roof starts, where the entryway is. So if we go 2/3 up from the bottom, that should give us our gutter line and roof line right here, where the foyer is and the front entry doors. So we're just talking architecture here. We're trying to stay on track with drawing a really beautiful home here in a farm setting. This is like a farmhouse in the beautiful farmland somewhere. Could be anywhere. You can kind of create your own story with that. There's a lot of farmlands in my area of the United States where I live in New Jersey. So, this is something common we see all the time in New Jersey, in the United States. So I'm going 2/3 up. If I say this is, we could use centimeters or the standard United States measurements, inches, or we could use centimeters. I might use centimeters. It gives me a little bit of an easier advantage here by just doing it a little quicker. I'm a little bit easier if I do it with the centimeters. So if I have 11 centimeters divided by 3, that's about, I don't know, let's say 4, 8, 12. So approximately 4 inches would be 1/3, but not quite 4 inches. So let's say 3.5 centimeters. I'm sorry. 3.5 centimeters is approximately 1/3 of 11 centimeters. So let's leave it right there. And it actually looks like it's right about where I anticipated it would be. And we'll just come across level. We'll keep this line level. We use a ruler if you want. Come across level. And this is the entry area, like this, which is another rectangle, basically right here, a rectangle. And then coming up here is the roof. And from here, we can say that the other roof beyond is the same height as this, like that. And this is here. So we have a metal roof on top here, like that. So here we have a metal roof over the entryway. Then there's a gutter system here over the underside of that metal roof, like that. Then we have below that, we have the 2 doors. So we can put the 2 doors in. I'm not going to get really fancy. I'm just going to put the approximate of 2 doors here. We're going to have a lot more fun painting this. This is a little more slow going. As you can see, we're actually drawing here, and we're going to, it's a little bit, slower pace as you're drawing. You're trying to get everything accurate as much as you can. So this will be the bottom of the door where you have solid wood. And then up here, you're going to have all your panes of glass. A nice, beautiful 3/4 view of glass panes. And then we have our panes, which we can just divide in half. And I'm just referencing this photo and saying, okay, approximately so I'm just going to draw in some approximations here. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like that. Panes of glass. You can take your time more and measure things out and equally measure things if you want, or you can just do it by eye. It depends on how much you're used to approximating things. And then here we have another gable roof heading up this way. You can always take this angle if you want to make it the same angle. You can take your ruler and say, okay, this is the angle, and you can just take your ruler over this way and sort of get the angle that way. So that it's somewhat similar. You wouldn't want this like angling off up here or angling off down there. You want to have it similar to this. So again, you can even take your pencil, hold it like this, and then just kind of remember to keep your pencil at the same angle. Kind of focus and say, okay, I don't want to start twisting my pencil as I go this way. I just want to keep my pencil like this and just kind of slide on over and drop it down, and then you get your angle that way. And that is pretty good enough. That's close enough that you're going to get the angle pretty close. And then we have the upper roofs over here. We also have this dormer over here. We have a doghouse dormer over here. And this one comes up about, not quite, maybe about halfway. Like that. with the roof area on there. So we have the roof shingles there on the doghouse dormer. And that might protrude out just a little bit more than the actual dormer itself. And there's the dormer. And trust me, once we start painting this, you're going to have fun. I'm not going to take a ton of time to paint this. We're going to actually have a real fun time just zipping right through the painting. And you saw the finished painting. You can see how loose it is, how fun it looks. It's not overworked or anything like that. We're just going to do it in a real fun, carefree fashion. You can make some thicker lines here on your gables and things like this, on your roof rake edges. So these are the rakes of the roof, the rake edges of the roof. Okay, so you do that. You can do some thicker lines just so you have some areas you can put your shadowing if you want a little shadowing on there. But other than that, I think we're pretty good. We're going to use the same shadow patterns as we see in this photograph. And so the light's coming from this side. And we always remember when we're starting out our paintings, let's start out the correct way. Let's make our light insignia right away. Before we start painting or putting any shadows in, make our spotlight insignia like so. We always talk about that. A light bulb there. And then you make your light rays like this. And that just shows you the light's coming from here. So that'll always give you the proper indication of where your light's coming from. If you have it already set right here, you can always just look up to that as your reference and say, oh yeah, light's coming from here. That means, well, the shadow's going to be on the right side of this chimney. There's going to be some shadowing in here by the doorway. If there's some trim on the building, the light's going to be shining from this way, so the shadows will be on the right side of the trim, like over here. So just a little thing to keep an eye on. That light insignia really helps you a lot when you're doing your shadows. There might be some shadows on the roof for different things. And so now that I'm looking at everything, I'm seeing that the rooftop over here is about here. The back area of the roof is over here. And then we might have a little bit of some foliage over here. Like this. There might be some foliage in certain areas of the roof here that you want to make. You might want to keep your roof with no trees in the background. If you don't want trees back here, you can leave those out. I'm just going to put some indications of some trees, some branches and limbs and things like that, and foliage, just a little bit. I can always change my mind and erase it if I want to later and just leave it sky wash. It's up to you. You're the artist. You decide on what type of things you want in your painting. Well, we've done a lot of work so far, so that means I'm just going to take a quick break myself. Maybe you need to take more breaks than I am right now, or maybe you don't need to take any breaks at all and you can just work straight on through. Fine. Again, you're the artist. You decide if you need to take some breaks to recharge your concentration level. And sometimes it does help, especially I know myself. I've heard some great artists in my days as I've studied different artists. I know a lot of artists say to take breaks as you're going through your painting. Obviously, oil painters that paint oil paintings, they might sometimes take weeks and months to do a oil painting. Watercolor artists usually do their watercolor paintings more rapidly, maybe one day or maybe half a day, like 4 hours they might do a painting, or maybe they'll take a day or two, or maybe a week. It depends. But again, let's take a quick break and we'll come right back and we'll finish up the drawing. We just have a few more windows to do. And I think that'll be it, and we'll be ready to paint. Okay, so we'll be right back. All right, so we're going to continue on here. We'll get our last few windows and shutters in, and I think that's going to be about it. So I'll just notice that there's windows on each side of the chimney on the first and second floors. So let's start up here at the top, and we notice that these windows here are just a touch above where the bottom of the gable rake edges are, where the rake trim is here. So let's go up a little bit from the bottom. Not a whole lot, just a tiny bit, maybe about a foot or a quarter of an inch, if that. And let's just make two lines below the windows there. Then I'm going to notice that they're about to the bottom of this rake edge here, these windows. So they're not tremendously high above. They're going to be about there. So I'm going to put 2 there. And then I'm going to just make a square like this. And I just noticed that they're actually, it'll be on a slight angle here. So I'm going to do a slight bit of an angle here. And I'm just going to do my shutters like this. So I hope that looks okay for everybody. I noticed that the sashes are halfway, so I can do that halfway on the window. And then halfway like this, halfway like that. So these are quarters. And they're 3 wide. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. So that is the patterns of the windows. Again, you can make the patterns of the windows anything you like. You can leave out the panes and just make them glass and no panes whatsoever. It's up to you. I'm just kind of going with what I see here. These 2 windows over here are directly below the other 2 up top. So we're just going to come straight down and say this is the tops of the windows here. And then I'll just measure and say these are a little bit larger than 2 centimeters, so about 2.5 centimeters. And they're about the same distance, like that. So I'll just transfer down these plumb lines like that for the windows and the shutters, like this. They're the same heights. This is a little further over here, the shutters. So there's a little bit of a okay, halfway and then half again. And again, I'm not going to get too bogged down with details. I'm just going to try to keep this enough so that we can use our brush when we're painting and be able to capture the details of what we're looking at here. I'll just take this off for a second. Get that back there. Like so. Okay, so we're back in business with our photograph. And I noticed that one thing I do notice, we made these windows too small. Essentially, the photograph here, these windows are a little bit larger than these up top. But also, too, when you're taking a picture from far away, the upper windows will look a little smaller. So that's when I just leave. I'm going to make these windows a little larger, like this. You can draw this by hand and you don't have to use rulers if you don't want to. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Halfway, I divide that first rectangle in half for the 2 sashes, the upper and lower sash of the window, and then I just divide it in 3 in thirds for the window panes, and then I go halfway across each one like that. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Windowsill there, windowsill up here. Okay. And then over here, we'll do one window over here, like this, with a shutter here. Halfway, 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 like that. So we're just going to put a little bit of that window in. And then this window down here is almost the same height as this one, the doors. So we're going to do that. We're going to make that the height of the doors. We'll make a shutter here, and then we'll just go halfway, halfway, halfway. 1, 2, and there we go. And that's it. We are all set. We have pretty much everything in good standing here with all of the drawing and details that we needed, like this. And now's the fun part. I'm going to make this line over here, the edge of the corner of the house here, like that. And then there's another rooftop over here, and that's actually higher up, about the same height as the other roof. So I'll erase this a little bit over here, and I'll just carry this roof line over here across straight, like that ridge of this roof over here, where the dormer is anyway. Just nice to pick up that line across the way there. And I think that is it. And that's the other roof over here. And this is just going to be wall here, and nothing too exciting, no windows or anything like that. All right, so now we're good. And now you can actually, if you want to, you could just pencil in a couple of the shrubs that we see here. So there's some bushes and low-lying shrubs and things that are along the front of the house here. And I think that's good enough for that over here on this side. And then over here, there's some more along where the entranceway is. Like that. And so I'll just kind of pencil it in loosely, just so we know we kind of want to. And we're going to have our sidewalk like this, flowing into the front entryway like that, with a couple of maybe expansion joints on the sidewalk there, like that. All right, so that is a really good, strong drawing, architectural drawing of a facade of the front of this beautiful farmhouse. You can do this freehand. You don't have to do this with a ruler like I've done. I've tried to keep a little more structure for those of you that want to maybe use the ruler and some measurements and sort of work things out that way. But a lot of this is pretty much fundamental. You can just look at your photo, or you can get pictures offline. If you look up online, like houses, farmhouses, things like that, you can get anything that looks anything close to this, similar, and then just work from that. And you can draw it freehand. You don't have to draw it like with a ruler again and doing some measurements and things like this. But a ruler does help you to keep things pretty much plumb and straight as far as like your chimneys and keeping your roof edges straight. But if you're really pretty solid with your drawing skills, you might be able to do this freehand and not have to worry so much about using a ruler. But I like to use rulers for architecture especially. It does keep things looking really, really sharp and crisp and on point. So that's now the key. Now the key is just, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll start painting. And again, I'm going to do a more loose, fun painting over the top of this drawing. But the main thing is, since I have that drawing done real solid, and I've done it with a lot of accuracy with measurements and using our ruler, things like this, you'll find that it goes a lot smoother when you're doing your painting, because you kind of have trust that your drawing is solid, and then you can go in and have fun and go at a little faster pace when you're doing your painting. So we're going to show you how to do that next. So give me a second or two. I'll just take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll start painting. All right, so we're going to get started, and we're going to just give our paints a quick spritz. Like so. I use the Holbein spritzer bottles. They work great. Get some of the water onto these paints. And again, this is the Prang Oval 16 set. We're doing the Extreme Beginner, so we use the Prang Oval 16 set. It's really fun to use, simple to use. You just basically open it, spritz it with some water, and you're ready to paint. You can close it or leave it open, doesn't matter. A week later, you can come back, spritz it with a little water, you're ready to paint again. There's no other maintenance to it, anything else like that. And that's why I would say if you're beginning out with watercolors, you can't go wrong with using a Prang Oval 16 set. They're just great. And then I have some other brushes here that I found in the studio. So I'll use the Prang Oval 16 round brush that comes with the set. I'll also use a couple small square brushes, flat brushes that I found that I'll need for the windows. So I try to have usually on hand some good square brushes or flat brushes for windows and things like this. I also have another very small flat brush like this that can sometimes get into these smaller window panes and things like this. So for architecture, homes, buildings, houses, things like this, I tend to really rely on some really good small synthetic inexpensive brushes for my windows and things like that, my more square and rectangular shapes. And then of course the round brush we can use for any other shadowing and things like this. So we have plenty of firepower here with our brushes. So first thing I'll do is I'll probably start out with I'll start out on the left side over here and work my way over this way in the painting. And maybe this brush is going to be the best actually to get these smaller rectangles in. These might be a little bit too large. So I can see from my drawing that this one's going to be, can you kind of see that? Maybe I should zoom in a little bit here. I take the risk of throwing my video off of focus, but I guess I have to do it sometimes. So here you can kind of see these flat brushes that I have. This one here tends to fit right perfect with the window panes like this. 1, 2, 3. So I can go right through these here up top with this really small. This happens to be a Da Vinci Black Sable. It's 1840 is the product number, and it's a 2/0. So you can kind of see that that's the brush. I've probably had this for 10 or more years probably. I don't use it all the time, but it's really an excellent brush. It's probably the smallest square brush I have, or flat brush I have. And you can kind of see how these are a little bit too large for those rectangles there. So let's start out with this one here. And I'm just going to make these, first I'll start out with a little bit of black up here. That gives you your darkest dark that you may ever have in this painting. That's going to be that darkest dark you'll ever have in this painting. There's some black shutters in this painting, so we're going to use a lot of actually this black here, which is kind of like an ivory black, a warm black. And then from there, let's go with some blue. 2 blues here we have. So we'll use some blue. I'll get some decent amount in here on the palette, so we have it in there mixed up. You can even use a larger brush to start mixing up your mixes and then go back to your smaller brush once you have your mixes in your palette. So it's not. Okay, so we have blue like this. Then we add some brown just to warm that blue up a little bit. And we go with some more blue like that. And a little bit of green in there too, I think, is going to look good. A little bit of green, trees around. There's trees around in this picture, so that's going to reflect into the window panes, the window glass. All right, so now we've mixed up some good color. Let's get some, and let's just go in and have fun doing the window panes. So I'm just going to go in, and I'm not necessarily trying to do it perfect or anything like that. Just trying to get these in like that. Maybe a little black up here. Might be a little darker up there where the shadows are up there. So that's good. That's one bit of window panes we have and window completed. There might be there's a sash here. So we can add a little shadow under that area there, which is the sash. And we'll come right back over and start working on this. And again, I'm going at a good pace. I'm not taking too much time. And there's a sash there, so that's going to catch a little more shadow under there. All right, so now you can see we have our two top windows. Now we can these are a little larger, so now I'm going to use my next step up. This is the next. Actually, let me zoom out. That's the thing I always do. I always mention I run the risk of not being in focus, so I just want to check, make sure I'm in focus here. Let me go back in, zoom in. And then I can always just put this brush across here, make sure I'm about okay, that looks good. And I can just zoom back out. There we go. Good. All right, so now we're just back out, zoomed where we need to be. And then we're just going to do this. We're going to a little bit of a darker shadow under here, so you can get that black paint in there. And we're just going to go right down the line, like that. Same thing over here. And like I said, you see how we're zipping through this now because we took the time and did the drawing carefully with our rectangles and squares and our windows and details, things like this. Once you get in and do that in the beginning, it kind of sets you up just to have a little bit of more fun and free time as you go through your painting when you're doing the painting process. Like that. And I'm just going to keep on working. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing. We got the front door. We have the lights on the front door. You can always go in at a later time, like not right this second, but once you're done with all these window panes, you can go in and overlay more color into your window panes if you want. You can add more green if you want, maybe a couple different glazings of color instead of, you get the first glazing in now, like this. So we'll get our first glazings in now. These are a little darker up here, and we'll put a little bit of a shadow there. Like that, and you can kind of see we're just moving right along. And there's a little bit of a shadow this way. So I would say you can kind of angle this shadow this way because you have the light coming this way. So that'll tend to, you might see some of this kind of a shadow this way And over here more, you're going to see more shadow on the left. So that's where I'd put more of the shadow on the left side over here. And I also wanted to mention too, right now I've fallen into the problem of, I've got lots of cool colors in here, but I need to add some warm colors. Not enough warm colors. I have too much cool here. So that's when I do a quick assessment and say, well, let me add some orange here like this. Maybe a touch of darker orange like this. And we'll do that. We'll just take some of that and add some orange, some warm mixtures right over the top of the cooler colors that we have here. Trust me, that's going to look so much better if you have some warm and cool working to your advantage when you're doing your paintings. Like this, you add a couple of these little bits of warmth to those cool colors. You can even go with a little bit of red. Like that. So you can see I want to get some warmth in there for that cooler bluish green we put in. And I think that is good. So we're going to keep working these colors. We're not going to go off track on anything. We're going to stick with the same colors we just used and just kind of keep that color mix going for the rest of the painting. We could also take some purple for shadow. And since we're going to use this for shadow, purple, let's just get some of that in here too. And that could be up in the darkest shadow areas that we see up here. That'd be the perfect spot to add some darker shadow with some of that purple. You can add a little bit here. You can take your time. You can take your time doing your shadowing. And your window panes. You can take as much time as you want to do the details of this painting. I'm moving at a good pace because I'm trying to kind of get this all done in like 1 or 2 hours for everyone, so you can kind of just see the overall process. But you can take your time. You can take, a day or two to do all the details if you want of the painting, or you can go even faster than I'm doing and just kind of do it much more loosely and freely. Just zip in some window pane colors. You can also use some white paint at the end of the painting to recapture some of your window panes, so don't ever worry if you paint over some of your window panes. You can go back and add a little white, which we're going to do at the end of the painting. You'll see how we do it. Going to cover everything here as we go, and I'm always hoping that you'll subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed before. If it's your first time here, welcome. Thanks so much for coming by. You've made the right decision and you're actually at the right place at the right time. We do everything watercolor here on my channel. We're covering every type of watercolor subject matter you can imagine. We do architecture, homes, barns, houses. We do street scenes, buildings. We do seascapes, we do boats, we do flowers, we do portrait paintings, we do everything watercolor here, so you're all set. If you're interested in watercolor and you want to learn watercolor, you're at the perfect place. All you do is you just hit the subscribe button, and from now on you won't lose track of me, and you can just work along with us. We're always covering all the fundamentals every time we do a painting. It doesn't matter if it's a really fancy, intricate painting or whether we're just doing some exercises. We're always covering the fundamentals of watercolor, and that's all that you need. You just need to know those fundamentals really solid. And if you do them over and over again like we do here on my channel, you're going to learn them. You're going to be strong with your fundamentals, and that's just going to always be your basic habits when you're doing your watercolor paintings, and that'll mean you'll just be doing more beautiful paintings because you have the solid fundamentals that you need to create beautiful paintings under your belt. All right, so let's take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll start doing a little bit of the larger washes now. We've done the fine, intricate lights of the windows, which are beautiful. And then after this, we're going to start getting into some of the other washes. Let's do the rooftops next, okay? And we'll get started in just a second. All right, so now we're just going to get ourselves prepped for the rooftops, painting in the rooftops. So we have our colors, our color mixtures that we're going to use. We're going to stick with those colors. And I'm going to look around for a brush that we could use. All right, I found a good square brush here that I might be able to use. This is a Blix 1/2-inch Studio Synthetic. Very inexpensive brush. So this might do a perfect job here for us. So I'm just going to go in and get some brown, some orange, some red. So brown, orange, red, and get some good warmth going for the rooftop shingles. I noticed they're like a brownish red. Okay, and then there is some blue in there. So let's get some blue. Both of our blues here. Okay, I'm going to try to mix the color until I get it. Maybe some purple. Some shadow color in there, some yellow. I think that yellow is really going to mix it just perfect. Like that. That looks really close to what I'm seeing. So let's try this. Let's start getting our rooftop. Start over here on the left. I'm a right-handed person. If you're left-handed, you'd start over here on your painting and go this way, so that you don't lean into your. Does that make sense? Just so we don't lean into our paint as we're going across. You have to always remember that. Let's be careful. And then I'm going to add other colors too as we go, and some purple. I'm going to try to mix different mixtures here as I go. But that'll be my main mix that we just mixed up. This is going to dry lighter too, don't forget that. Watercolor always dries lighter than when you put it on, and especially the praying colors do lighten up a lot, more than if you're using tube paint. So if you're using tube paint, that's something to remember. If you're used to, like maybe you work on my channel and you're using your tube paints right now, well then you're kind of already anticipating that your tube paints are going to lighten up once you're done with these washes. But also, I always remember that with my praying set, it does tend to lighten up even more. So there we go. We have some. I'm going to try to mix in some different colors, maybe take some red over here. And if you can infuse in some different colors as you're going, it's going to look better, more interesting. Okay, there we go. That's our roofs. Can you believe it? That is all we have to do for our roof. We just have to do that bit of roofing right there. And that's it. Our shingles are all complete and in. Okay. Now we will work on our chimney. Now I think with our chimney what we're going to do is we'll downshift again to our smaller square brush here. Maybe we'll use two. Maybe we'll use these two square brushes, these flat brushes, to do our stonework on our chimney. And again, also too, you could make this chimney brickwork if you wanted to. It would be a little more tedious and time-consuming, but you could use your very, very tiny brush like this, your tiny flat brush like this, that we use right in the beginning to do the windows up here. You could use this brush and do the bricks one at a time and kind of do a very careful But brick are kind of difficult to do. You'd have to go back to one of my videos. Just about a year ago, I made a video on how to create brickwork and stonework in watercolor. So if you look that up on YouTube, Chris Petri, painting brickwork and stonework, you'll see how you can actually recreate brick and stonework on your paintings when you're doing architecture like this, or city scenes or landscape paintings where you have these type of materials that you're painting. Just a little food for thought. And okay, we have, actually, let's use all three of these for our stonework on our chimney. Let's see if we can get that accomplished. So I'll take what I've used for the roof and move it on down here. So actually, we're done with the roof, so we can just leave that like that. We'll make some red over here. We'll take some blue over here. So we're just going to kind of make a whole conglomeration of mixes of all the colors that we've used before. But we're going to, well, this is kind of a, there's all types of colors here. So let's do that. And we also did mention that our chimney is wider at the windows here. So we have some shoulders on our chimneys, as they call them. And our chimney gets wider here. So I'm just going to do that. Okay, and then I'm going to start up here. Carefully, I don't want to lean into my painting. If you have to let your painting dry a little bit and you come back like a half an hour later, chances are you won't smudge anything if you're resting your hand on the paper. But I'm going to use some large stones here. So I'm going to do a couple large stones in this chimney like that. Not everywhere, but I'm going to put in some larger stones here and there. And this one here, put a large stone there. That one there, the masons were grunting and figuring out how they got to lift that stone. Okay, so, oh, I just remembered our chimney is wider over here. Let's way over here. Let's go a little more. There we go. All right, so here you see I did some large stones. I can put that flat brush to the side now, and then we're just going to use these other two flat brushes here to get the rest of our stonework. And you can use any of the colors you want. And you can just start putting in the stonework. And it's basically squares. And you don't have to do it everywhere. You can just add some colors and some splashes too. Add some splashes to this to make it easier. So I'll take my flat brush, load it up with some water like this. Like that. Light's coming from this way again too, so you might see a little more light over here on this side. Like that. I'm going to do some cooler colors there too. Have fun with your stonework. Mix it up. As long as you're doing everything rectangular and square shapes, you're fine. Just think rectangles and squares. Rectangles and squares. That's all you have to remember. The rest is fine. You don't need to do rounds, stones, or anything like that. You do some splashing along the way. A little couple finger taps to soften up some sections. You don't need to have everything perfect. Rectangles and squares everywhere, like that. Blue, I'm doing everything colors, blues. Okay, that's all I'm doing is, okay, I'm not going to keep worrying about it too much. Just let's get in some colors. And again, rectangles and squares everywhere, and you're fine. I wouldn't put any kind of other shapes than squares and rectangles at this point, for the chimney anyway. Like that. And you keep some of those shapes. Like that. Then over here I would use some of that darker dark. Maybe there's some shingles over here. Okay, so that could be some black and brown. Like that there, the shoulders of the chimney. You can fix it up a little bit later if you have to. But that should be fine. Look how good that looks. You can subdivide these larger stones that you made before. Okay, you can add some more orange and red to some of the mixtures of the stones here and there. I go in, I add some of that red, and then I soften that up like this. Like that. So you can get some different colors going there. I think that looks fine. So now you have your chimney completed. We might want to make our chimney stone up top. So maybe we'll use our darker dark and get a shadow under there. And then we'll put a chimney stone on top. Okay, that's the chimney cap. Okay, and then maybe a little orange and red up here for the chimney pot. There we go. All right, so I would say now's the perfect time. Let's take a break again. We've done a lot of work so far. We got our chimney in, our roof in our first portion of the painting. We did our windows, our window panes. We're really in great shape now. We have most of the painting done. We're going to leave the facade white. So that's going to be like a white stucco that we have here on the walls. So if you can imagine, we have white stucco on the walls. We have a nice, beautiful brownish gray roof. We have our brown and gray and all kinds of mixes of colors for our stone chimney. All that we have left to really do is, we can do this kind of quickly here. Let's get our this is going to be our roof here, our standing seam roof. That's kind of like an orangey, coppery kind of color. Let's put that in. That looks really good. All right, perfect. Okay, so we have that. And what else do we need? I think that's pretty good. we can now take a break. We'll come back. We'll do our shutters for our windows. That's the next thing we need to do. Our black shutters over here. I don't think these windows have shutters over here, but we'll put them on anyway, I think. So we'll put shutters on all the windows. And then after that, we'll do a little bit of the sky wash, some of the trees in the background here behind the building, behind the structure. And also, too, we're going to have some bushes and grass on the front of the house here, our beautiful farmhouse. And that should be it. So we'll be right back. We'll start finishing up everything. All right, here we go. We're going to actually, like we said, we're going to finish up by doing, well, one of the main things we're going to have to finish right now is going to be our shutters. And like we said before, we're going to try to find a brush that's going to be about similar to the size and the width of the shutters. And this brush looks like it's going to work good. So this one seems to fit perfectly everywhere for our shutters. Let's use this one. So I'll just rinse off the brush here. The shutters are dark, pretty much a black color. So let's use the black color here. The kind of like this is, I would call this almost like a ivory black. You can add in some brown to the mix, a little bit of blue to the mix if you want to add some variety of color here. Just a little bit to mix in, a little bit of red. So you can kind of just spice up the color a little bit if you want. Some orange, some red. Like this. That should be fine. And then we're just going to go in and add them in and see how they look. And then you can shape your... Maybe here you might say, you know what, I need a smaller brush even than this. So that's no problem. We'll use the smaller one. For here up top, these windows are a little smaller. So these, we'll use this one. This might be a little better. So we'll use this one here. And again, we'll start from the left and go this way. If you're right-handed, if you're left-handed, you're going to start over here and work your shutters this way across the picture. So we'll start over here. And I'm just going to take that and just do this. Just like that. Good. And then here I might even go on a little bit of a side angle. A little bit of that shutter is kind of hiding behind the chimney there. And I would leave a little bit of white paper along the sides of the window. So you kind of notice I'm not painting right up to the glass of the windows. I'm leaving that, a little bit of that white paper there. That looks good. That's kind of like that's the window frames. Looks good. All right, see, we're actually coming along here. All the details are coming together now. Again, I'll get my larger brush here because we have the larger shutters here. And again, I'm going to hold that line a little bit away, that paint, I'm going to hold it a little bit away from the window. Like that. And then carefully lift up when I get close to the bottom of the window. And then here the chimney is... Here I'm going to have to go back to my smaller brush again, so that I can make sure I don't paint over that white line along the window. This is going to be shadow too. I don't know if we'll even do that shadow. Can you see that shadow in the photograph on the phone? That dark shadow there? I might leave that out of this painting. I don't think I'm going to put that in. I'm going to pretend it's a cloudy day today. So on this painting, we're just going to pretend it's a cloudy day. And so we're not going to worry about shadows. We're just going to paint it as if there's clouds in the sky and there's no real strong shadowing. And then again, I'll go back to that little bit of a smaller flat brush there. And again, I'm going to try to maintain that distance there between the window so we get that white bit of line there where the window is. And then we'll go with the larger here again. Ah, that looks so good, doesn't it? And these flat brushes, these square brushes are really incredible. If you're doing architecture, you have to eventually save up for those, or you purchase those a little bit at a time. Get a few here and there. And you'll be so ecstatic when you go to do some architecture. You can just use some square brushes and it does all the work for you, actually. You don't even have to worry. And all right, I see that we have really done some good work here with our shutters. Let's call it a day on the shutters there. I think those are fine. I might use this very, very fine line, and I'll use some purple here, like this. I am going to do some shadowing. So some of that black mixture, which was, black and brown and red and blue. I will do a little bit under here. Actually, maybe we'll do the shadows. Why not? Let's pretend it's a sunny day, and we'll stick with our plan up here that this is the sunlight coming across this way. And we're just going to do this here. This is the one shadow there. There's a shadow up there under the stone. And there is a touch of a shadow here, maybe. Maybe just a little bit. It's not too much. There we might have some of that shadow, but I think that's about it there. We will have some shadowing under here. So this is where we're making our windowsill. So what I do is for the windowsills, I just make the shadow under the windowsill here like this. And the same over here, there's a windowsill here. And under here too, there's a windowsill like that. Okay. And the next thing we'll do is let's get some more shadows in here with our large brush. We're going to use our larger brush now here. This is our 1/2 inch flat brush. So now we're going to take our purple I'll mix up a lot of purple with some of the other mixtures we have left to gray it down a little bit, but I think that's fine. You can see that purple kind of mixture. Nothing too fancy. And then I'm just going to I'm going to actually put the same thickness of line of shadow that you see in this picture. And that's about a 1/2 inch out from the chimney here. So I'm going to do that. You could always put a piece of tape on your you can put a piece of tape on your paper, your watercolor paper here, to get a perfectly straight line for your shadow. Or you can just do this. Just carefully keep watching as you go. You can draw a pencil line too. I think that might be a good idea. Draw a pencil line if you feel like you can't keep that line perfectly straight. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight, but if you can keep it somewhat straight like this, that looks good. Like this. And also when I look and I see there's more shadow over here along this section here. Like that. And there's more shadow over here. This is in shadow over here. And then there's a shadow that runs here and comes up like that. So for whatever reason, it comes up this way. Like that. And I'll just dab in some extra wash there to get that line good. And then there's some shadowing over here too, by the door and under the gutter. There's a gutter there, a white gutter. I'm going to leave that white. Okay, and then there's some shadowing under here on the door, like that. And there's some more shadowing on this side over here. Like this. Okay. And there's shadow there. Underneath these rake boards on this eave of this, or at the gable here at this section. So you can see we did add some shadowing after all. And now let's take a quick break again. I want to let that shadow wash dry before I lean into it or have a problem with it. I definitely, I tend to say that is why breaks are good too with watercolor. You'll hear me say take breaks a lot, especially when you're painting. You'll notice that if you do take breaks while you're painting and doing your watercolor washes, it's to an advantage actually, because then it kind of dries out some of the washes that you're working on. And then when you go back in and continue to work, you're less likely to smudge and dip your rest your hand into wet watercolor paint and smudge on your painting. So one of the things of watercolor that's really kind of challenging, you'll notice, and does that make sense? It kind of makes sense that, you know, if your paint, you let it dry every 10-15 minutes as you're working, you stop and let things dry, you'll have less, it'll be less likely to, you'll be less likely to smudge any of your paint, like leaning into it with your hand or by accident smudging something. So that does work to our advantage as watercolor artists, that we, if we take breaks, actually it lets the paint dry a little bit, and it's a little bit easier to work with at that point. And you'll, as watercolor artists, I know you all are totally familiar, especially even if you're just starting out with, even if you're just painting for the first time, welcome if you're just starting for the first time and painting here along with us. But even if you've been painting for 6 months or a year or, 3 or 4 weeks or whatever it is, if you're just starting out, you'll realize you're always very careful as you paint in watercolor, because you're going to have to be careful as you work your painting. Otherwise, you might lean into something or rest your hand on certain things. So that's why you tend to work from left to right. If you're a right-handed person, or if you're a left-handed person, you're working from right to left. And you kind of try to work your paintings like that, work from left to right or right to left as you go. That's a really big help as far as not leaning into paint that's wet and smudging and so forth. But that's just one of those little tidbits of information as watercolor artists that we have to learn. But that comes with experience. And as long as you're working and joining along here every week, you're going to kind of get the hang of painting quickly, because you're working all the time with it. And you'll just automatically, it's like riding a bicycle. Once you start riding a bicycle, you get the feel for it. You get on there, you pedal, you balance, you go. Next thing you know, you're zipping around and you're not even thinking about it. You're just having a fun time zipping around with our bicycles. So when we all learned how to ride bicycles when we were young, you get the hang of it after a while. But those first few times when you're riding your bicycle, it's a little bit sketchy, right? So it's the same thing with watercolor. If you're just starting out, it's going to be a little sketchy in the beginning. You're going to wind up dipping your hands in paint and smudging on your paper, ruining a really good painting. You might be 90% done with your painting. All of a sudden, bam, you rest your hand into something and you smudge it and it ruins the whole thing. That's when you don't worry about it. You take the painting, you see if you can fix it a little bit up, try to fix it up a little bit if you can. If not, you just take the painting, put it to the side, and you just start another one. That's it. You start another one, and then you use the back of that painting. Once that one's dry, a couple weeks later, you can use the back of that sheet of paper and you start a new painting on top of that. Or you do some exercises on there, some practice stuff on the backs of your paintings that maybe you've had a few problems on one of your paintings or two. We all have those. They always happen as watercolor artists. You're probably only going to do, 10 or 20% of your paintings are going to come out just the way you like. The rest of them, you're actually just going to realize there's things you don't like about it. Something didn't come out right. Something doesn't look right. Colors don't look right. Whatever. Don't worry. Just keep working at it. We'll keep working all together, painting along here on my channel. I'm just really thankful you're here. You're joining along with us each week. You're getting the time in, the practice in, and that's the main thing. If I can motivate you and get you excited about painting every week, that means you're here, you're painting, you're having a good time. You're just in the zone, learning all the fundamentals of watercolor on an ongoing basis, and that's just going to lead to great skills going forward for you. So let's come back. We're going to finish up. We're just going to do some bushes in the front here, some trees in the background, and some sky wash, and we will be completed. This painting is, I would say, 80% complete now. We just have a little bit left to go. Let's finish it up, and we're going to get ready to start another one in just a few. Who knows? All right, so now we're kind of moving along here. Let's finish up. We're going to do the sky wash maybe next. Let's get that sky wash completed. I'll just finish up the square and get some new fresh water in my water bucket here. And then we'll get a good wash on here. Let's use our 1/2-inch wash brush here. So I'll take some fresh, clean water and I'll paint around the trees and I'll paint around the chimney just so I can get this wash in without infiltrating too much into the chimney area and the trees. I might tie in a little bit of the color into the trees, but not too much. I don't want it to flood into that area. And I also want to go around the rooftops. So I'm going to make a wet, basically a damp brush along just above the top of the rooftop. And the eaves of the roof too. And this will really help things when we're doing our sky wash so the water doesn't flood down below into the rooftops or the building or anything, the house, the farmhouse here. So now I'm going to blot up a little bit of this water over here. I see it got a little bit too puddly there, so I lift up those puddles there. And then we'll get some sky wash color, so we can just go in and we'll use maybe some of this here. This blue seems to be a good sky color. Maybe a touch of blue. That should be good. A nice light sky will do well here. Okay, and then tie a little bit of the tops of the trees in with the sky. Like so, and that is about it. We have the sky wash in. You can add in a little extra wash, like this, at the corners maybe. That gives it a little bit of variation. That looks fine. And you can also tie in a little bit of that blue into the chimney, just a touch of that. That might look good. All right, and then we can come down here and we'll get some green. And then if we need to add a little bit of, I spritz the paint a little bit. And then maybe I'll just do a little scrubbing around here for the bushes. That kind of looks good. We could add some blue over here. Do some darker bits of color there on this. Add a little bit of extra water in there just to get some splashing. Okay, and we're going to get some more gold, yellow. Go. We'll get some grass here. I'll just add a little bit of that lemon yellow here and there. Like this. That looks pretty good. A little bit of splashing here and there. There might be a little bit of some bushes and grasses and things over here. A little bit of blue and green. Blue. Orange, get a little darker dark there. And a little bit of extra. Maybe some grasses and things along the bottom of the chimney. And there we go. We have a good bit of grass for the front lawn. We can get some bit of trees up here, some greenery there. And that about puts the finishing touches on the trees up here on the top, where the roof is, behind the house. A little bit of splashing here. Focus splashing. I wouldn't go like that. A little bit of a darker blue, brown, purple on this side over there. Maybe over here too. Like that. A little bit of a shadow under that doorway there. A little bit of orange. This is where I can just lift up a bit of color. A little bit of orange for some cement color, maybe. Just a little bit of a light wash of a little bit of orange, grayish orange with a little bit of brown and a little bit of the mix of purple, just to get a little bit of a different tonal value for the front sidewalk. And I think the rest of the house looks good with that really bright light. And we can always remove this pencil line if we want to. Over here on the left side. I would do that though once this is 100% dry. Then I would go in and do any erasing you want to do with pencil lines if that's what you want. Sometimes we would like to lift up a couple pencil lines here and there. So it's better to do that once the painting is like 100% dry. That just saves headaches because I've done it numerous times where I'll erase a spot that still has wet paint and it just tears up the paper and basically ruins the painting. So I would always avoid erasing anything until the painting is 100% dry, like 1 or 2 days later. And that's pretty much, I think, we have a finished painting. I hope everyone had a fun time doing this. This is really the most difficult part, is probably the beginning when we have to really take some time. We get the measurements of everything and get all the angles squared away. But once we do that, everything seems to work out fine and fall into place correctly. And then I think one last thing we'll do is we'll just add some light fixtures here. I noticed I didn't. I just wanted to get these light fixtures completed here, so I would do the that looks good, and then maybe a tiny bit of that orange wash on the left side. And we can kind of zoom in a little bit more. And then what we'll do is, right, of course, in the beginning of the video, you did see the finished painting. We had a real good close-up of it, so that's a perfect time. You can do a screen capture and work from that. Maybe you can do this all freehand and not get as much into all the angles and the rulers and measurements and things, because if you do have pretty much a set square and you're looking at this right in the beginning of the video, you'll see it's very much, everything is really easier to visualize and probably draw freehand once you see the finished painting. You can kind of see all the real darks and the lights, and it would seem to me an easier painting to draw first when you have the painting in front of you. That would be a lot easier to do than to try to just start from scratch without any pencil, lines and things with rulers and stuff like that. That's why I wanted to make sure I got everything 100% good. But you can kind of see how the paper is all broken down into sections, and it's kind of more easier, again, to visualize. But I know you'll do the create this painting the best way you know how and the best way you want to. You're the artist. You're going to create your painting just the perfect way that works for your techniques and your methods that you use on a constant basis. And again, thanks for stopping by, having fun with us here, and we'll see you on the next video. And again, want to thank everyone for the great comments in the comment section, for all the kind words and all the great encouragement that everyone gives me on a weekly basis when we're doing our videos in the comment section. Thank you so much, everyone, for doing that for me. Keeps me excited about painting and coming back each week on YouTube. So again, it's going to be real exciting to start another painting very, very soon, and we'll see you in another week or a couple days. Okay, bye-bye.